So Jason, this next study, I thought when you first proposed this was a little weird to look at defoliant trials in central Illinois. I was kind of puzzling on the need for something like this. But after, we've done this for a few years now, I think there is some actual value in some of this research we're doing.
It's not something that's for everyone, but there are some situations why a grower might want to consider it. And it's interesting when we talk about this with growers, there seems to be quite a bit of interest. And they always, it seems like, so I'll just give you some background. When we started talking about this, I was walking some plots with one of our agronomists, and we have some really good beans that have a high yield potential, but they keep their green stems late into the year, and growers don't really like to cut green stems. They got to slow down a little bit with the combine, and that's not ideal. So we were talking about, can we manage some of those in a way that can allow them to combine them in a normal time frame at a normal speed, and still get the increased yield potential out of those beans that have good late season health. We also talked about, could you push the envelope a little bit, plant a little bit later bean, and harvest it in the same time frame, get a little bit more yield potential. Maybe fungicide. Some people have the impression that fungicide can increase your maturity a little bit, make the beans stay healthy a little bit longer. Can we come in then and harvest them in a normal time frame by spraying something on that allows it to be done? And as I talk to growers, they come up with other ideas why they might be interested in their operation. So cover crops. If we could harvest the beans a week earlier, some years that can make the difference, make or break for a cover crop establishment success.
So if you've confused any farmers out there, what is a defoliant?
A defoliant is, we're just talking about spraying these beans to make them to dry down faster. And so I'm not interested too much, but paraquat is one thing that might be used to really kill things out there. It has the benefit of killing any late season weeds that are out there. But that's a little bit of a harsh chemical, not something I'm really interested in doing trials with. So for this, we used basically salt water. It's a product called Defol 5 that we can spray on, and it's used in a lot of, it's used in the South in some different situations, and it's used in seed corn production.
Yeah. Interesting.
So we started this work in 2020, and you can see here in the photos what the difference is in the sprayed and the unsprayed. So this picture was taken about the beginning of October, and you can see where we sprayed those on September 15th. They basically were ready to cut. The ones that we had sprayed a week prior to the picture were, not quite ready, but they were definitely farther along than the ones we didn't spray at all. We had some things confounding our data that year. This was just at a single location. We had a hard frost just after the application, and so it really narrowed up the difference that we saw in when those things matured, because the ones we didn't spray also matured pretty quickly. We didn't really know when to spray, so we sprayed an R6 timing and an R7 timing, and then what we really saw was in that early R6 timing, we saw about 6 to 10 days earlier we could harvest. When we looked at that later R7 timing, it was about a week. 2 to 9 days, depending on the maturity of the bean. But what we saw is when we sprayed that R6 timing, we hurt yield. So those beans weren't fully formed yet. The seed size was smaller, and we saw a pretty big decrease in yield in that year. But as far as the later application, the R7 application, we didn't see a decrease in yield. In fact, this is not statistically significant, but we saw a little tiny bump in the yield. So, pretty insignificant, single location, single year, but that's what we saw that year. We saw enough to really make us interested in seeing if we could try this again. Can we make things go a week earlier and not hurt yield? So we looked at this across quite a few locations in 2021. In fact, we had 5 different locations. Some of this was in farmer fields, and some of this was at our research locations. At the Liberty site, we had it in small plots. At the Bradford site, we had it in a farmer field, and then in strip trials at the other locations. So it's kind of a combination. One thing that was interesting this year, the beans matured really fast, and you probably noticed that. And that kind of confounded our results a little bit, because even when we came in and sprayed, they were maturing so fast already that we didn't see a huge difference. And so it was pretty inconclusive this year what we saw. And we saw 0 days benefit in some cases. We saw up to 9 days benefit in a couple cases, but really that was fairly, that 9 days is pretty generous. Really, from the time when, waiting for the time when there's no grain whatsoever left in the beans, which really a grower would probably be comfortable combining them, before that 9-day period. So we saw an average of about 2.5 days. Probably not enough that would make a grower interested in going out there and making another application to harvest 2.5 days earlier. We were in some cases able to drive a little bit faster with the combine. So on an 80-acre field, if you could go a half a mile an hour faster, it could potentially work. But I'm not, based on this data, we didn't see a decrease in yield or anything like that. But I'm not comfortable with making a recommendation to use this product yet. You probably look at this again this year and see what we find.
You plan to push maturity past the 3.8, like you like a 4.1, anything like that? Or are you happy with your maturity choice here?
So I think we've kind of found maybe the maturity play isn't necessarily a good play for it.
Yep.
And again, that might be a limitation on what varieties we've used. But I think in order, the idea of planting a later bean and being able to harvest it earlier, I think we're not seeing a huge benefit there.
Okay.
One thing we did learn this year, we got a little bit more information. Some people reached out to me after knowing we were doing this work, and I found out that our 6.5 timing is the ideal time to spray.
Okay. Huh.
So if you pull the beans apart, R6 is the full pod stage,
Yep.
And R7 is beginning maturity. And if you pop beans apart in that in between there time, there's a membrane around the seed, and when that stays with the pod and not with the seed, it's time to spray.
Interesting. Interesting. So this is an interesting study. Something we'll continue next year. Multiple locations.
Looked really promising in 2020. 2021,
Yep.
not so much. So 2021 was a unique year. We'll see what it looks like next year.
Great.